Hello everyone. So today is December 28th, and if you've been following my videos, you know that we are heading towards the Mercury conjunct Venus retrograde and conjunct Pluto in Capricorn. But what's also happening is that Jupiter is entering Pisces tomorrow. And so right now, Jupiter is at 29 and 57 minutes. So 29 degrees, 57 minutes of Aquarius. So it's in its last 3 minutes in Aquarius. So by tomorrow, Jupiter will be in Pisces. And so there's a couple things I really wanted to talk about in regards to this, because we still have the transiting North Node in Gemini. And it's at like 1 degrees and 11 minutes. And so it's at the very end of its transit. The nodes are at the end of the transit of Gemini and Sag. And so the South Node, if you've been following me, or if you've been following astrology, you know the South Node of the moon's been in Sag. And Jupiter is the guiding planet to Sagittarius consciousness. So it's interesting that Jupiter is now entering Pisces here tomorrow. And what's also interesting is that as Jupiter enters Pisces, it will be squaring the transiting nodes. So the guide or planetary guide or ruler to the South Node will be squaring the nodal axes of consciousness, right? Now, what's also happening, as you know, if you saw my last video, that Mercury is also coming to conjunct Venus retrograde tomorrow, right? And Pluto. So this is really important because Mercury is the planetary guide to the North Node. So as we have Mercury conjunct Venus retrograde, conjunct Pluto in Capricorn, and we have Jupiter ingress Pisces and squaring the nodes, this is really some important points to consider. It's bringing up specific energies that I think is really important to consider right now. And I'm going to share this with you. So Pisces and Virgo, Pisces is actually guided by Jupiter. Its ancient guide is Jupiter, right? So ancient planetary ruler, Jupiter. Its modern day ruler or planetary guide is Neptune. Neptune's been in Pisces for quite a while. We're used to that, right? But now we're going to have both of the planetary guides in its own sign, right? In Pisces. So this is bringing up to the forefront our Piscean and Virgoan consciousness, right? So it's going to make this Pisces-Virgo axis bigger. And the reason is because what Jupiter does is it just makes whatever is already there bigger, okay? And this can be beneficial. As long as what's there is beneficial, it's going to grow that benefit, right? But if what is there is actually not beneficial or it's shadow, then it's going to make that bigger. And so I think it's important to consider some of the shadow energies that can be this Pisces Virgo energy, especially because Mercury is coming to conjunct Venus and Pluto in Cap. So this is informing us. It's giving us the perceptions that we need to be able to discern. Mercury is all about discernment, right? As it is the planetary guide to Virgo energy as well. So it's about discernment. And it's about really, you know, as if you follow me, you already know, this is how I think of Virgo. It's like, what do we want to grow in the garden? Virgo wants to actually pull the weeds out of the garden. It uses discernment to do that. And what that means is like, okay, you know, whatever's here, is it actually going to bear fruit? Or is it going to actually give me the results I desire in growing consciousness? Is it actually going to provide nutrients that I can feed my consciousness with or feed my body with. And our body is just consciousness, right? Embodied on the earth plane. And so Virgo is much about that. And so it is about discernment. Mercury, its yin form of Mercury is Virgo, guides Virgo and energy. And this is about eliminating what is actually not in service to ourselves and our own devotions. So our devotion to the divine, as related to Pisces, our devotion to our own personal spiritual path, as related to Pisces, and devotion toward our own healing, which is also Virgo and Pisces. So because Pisces and Virgo is the healing axis of consciousness, it is the part of our consciousness that is devoted to the collective, devoted to spirituality, how we see it, our connection to source energy, God, Goddess, however you name that energy. And, you know, all the archetypes have their flip sides. They all have what regenerates consciousness and then also what debilitates consciousness, what is productive and what is destructive, right? So Mercury coming up to conjunct Venus and Pluto in Capricorn is likely giving us the information, the experiences, perceptions, maybe interactions and relationships that is actually giving us the information on seeing, as well as Jupiter moving into Pisces, right? Seeing, you know, is what I'm growing actually healthy? Because that's what Pisces and Virgo is really about, is actually creating health and vitality. Not only in service to our own evolutionary trajectory, but also in service to the collective. Because we are all a part of a collective consciousness. And so our own consciousness does contribute to the collective consciousness. So one of the things that's really important to look at when we're looking at Piscean energy is the shadow side of it. And one of those sides that would be shadow or debilitating energy is spiritual bypassing. So what is spiritual bypassing? I actually looked it up. So I'm going to read you some definitions in hopes that it can inform you and recognize these patterns that may be emerging or being exposed in these transits right now. So spiritual bypass or spiritual bypassing is a tendency to use spiritual ideas and practices to sidestep or avoid facing unresolved emotional issues, psychological wounds, and unfinished developmental tasks. The term was introduced in the mid-1980s by John Wellwood, a Buddhist teacher and psychotherapist. Now, the other definition I found is this. Spiritual bypassing is a way of hiding behind spirituality or spiritual practices. It prevents people from acknowledging what they are feeling and distances them from both themselves and others. Some examples of spiritual bypassing includes avoiding feelings of anger, not just avoiding feelings of anger, but feelings of detachment. And what is detachment? Detachment is actually associated with Aquarius, and there is healthy detachment, but there is also detachment in regards to disassociation. And disassociation or fragmented consciousness has very much to do with Aquarius and Pisces. And so, what is disassociation? It's not being present. It's actually bypassing our responsibilities. Potentially bypassing the needs of the body. bypassing our responsibilities in relationships, in our exchanges in relationship. And it can be using spiritual practices and spiritual ideas in order to do that. So this is something to be very, very aware of with the Piscean consciousnesses, and as Jupiter enters Pisces, squares the nodes, as well as now remains in Pisces for a year, right? It's going to make that bigger. It's going to make the spiritual bypassing bigger. So when we notice this in others or in ourselves, this is our opportunity. Jupiter gives opportunities to do the healing, to actually bring in the divine onto the earth plane. Because the divine is not just about ideas, it's about actually embodying the divine on the earth plane. And that's what the Pisces Virgo consciousness is really about. This is what it can create in our being, is to embody, which is also a Venusian or Taurus theme, embodying our spiritual ideals, embodying our spiritual practices in every way, meaning in every transaction, every experience, really being present, acknowledging our responsibilities, and doing the work that it takes to actually be in alignment with our actions, our words, and our spiritual journey. One of the things to be aware of too is that Pisces, if you have planets in Libra, if you have Pluto in Libra, this is definitely something to consider, because Pluto can show where it is we give our power away. So wherever our natal Pluto is where we can see that there are areas that we likely give our power away, or we do not harness our power. And so we're here to reclaim that. But we have to do the work to do it, to reclaim it, to harness it. And so it is the unconscious. It is the things we don't, the ways in which we give our power away or relinquish our power without being aware, right? So those of us that were born in the Pluto Libra generation have to be really conscientious around the spiritual bypassing, because there's a natural quincunx from Pisces to Libra. And so this is where the spiritual bypassing can happen, is in our one-on-one relationships, and in our minds, in our ideas, because Libra is an air sign. So is Gemini. It's an air sign. So we can actually use spiritual ideas, Gemini, even spiritual beliefs, Sagittarius, or ideas, Libra, and take action, Aries, instinctually, to avoid our embodiment on the spiritual plane. And so this can be a big awakening to seeing where we use ideas, and we can use ideas to avoid embodying our own spiritual path. Because, you know, often on the spiritual path, it means that we have to do our healing work personally. We have to do the work to show up. We have to do the work to actually align our words, our actions, our emotions, right? We have to acknowledge our emotions. We have to feel the pain that we've experienced, which we all have. We all have wounds. We've all experienced trauma. So we want to be really looking at, you know, where are there ways that we are becoming aware through our interactions with people of our own personal work that we could do in order to be more self-aware and actually embodying the spiritual path rather than talking the spiritual path, but, you know, really embodying it. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with talking the spiritual path, but we do have to apply ourselves on the physical dimension so that we can actually embody these ideas and the divine on the spiritual on the physical dimension. It's about bringing the divine on to the earth plane. It's about being it, owning it, which takes responsibility and accountability and integrity. And this is what Mercury, Venus, retrograde, and Pluto is giving the opportunity to actually really get the information on, you know, where it is that we need to do our own self-work, where it is that others might need to do their work, right? And are they willing to do the work? And so this can, you know, again, have us making choices around, you know, what's working for us in relationships and what's not. You know, are there people that aren't willing to do the work, or aware, or even capable, or able to do their own personal healing work? So I wanted to share these pieces of information because this transit's really such an opportunity to see, because Jupiter square the nodes, with this energy, it is going to require and likely going to bring some pressure for us to do this work, which is good, because when that pressure's there, this is where we get, you know, if we don't resist the pressure and we actually acknowledge it, we actually acknowledge where we have work to do, and we start to take steps to do that. This is how we actually implement our self-mastery. And this is what Capricorn is all about. This is what Pluto and Capricorn is all about. And Venus retrograde and Mercury. So we're all getting clues as to where we can actually begin to take more steps towards our self-mastery. So I hope this is helpful, and I will be back at the next video. If you like this video, if you got anything out of it, please do like, comment. I'd love to hear what you have to say. If you feel inclined to share a comment, ask a question, share your experience, and also please do subscribe to my channel. So I will see you in the next video.